Hey y'all, I'm Elisa, the Scrappy Wife behind ScrappyWife.com, and I'm wondering, does this count as art journaling? All right, so whenever I create an art journal video, I get comments all the time about people that really like it, but they feel like they can't do it, or that the things that they are doing don't count as art journaling. Today, I'm going to show you a really simple art journal process, and I'm going to just use the plan is to use some collage, some paint pens, and maybe some acrylic paint. We'll kind of see how it goes. You guys know these take on like a mind of their own, but we're starting really simple with just images that I have cut out of a magazine, Real Simple magazine. And we're going to start with a collage and then kind of see where it takes us from there. So I'm going to use these Sharpie oil-based paint pens. I bought these a while ago. I've been using them. I've been enjoying them. So I will link them down below. And we're just going to see if this counts as art journaling. Let's do it. All right, so as I get started, I'm going to start with my black paint pen and we're just going to draw some kind of random lines on the page. I'm going to preface this with saying I'm actually not sure whether this completed project is a hit or a miss. It was an interesting one. Let's just put it at that. It didn't turn out how I thought it would. It took a different direction, which is not a shocker because that happens all of the time in art journaling. You start putting things on the page, you start getting ideas in your head, and different things are going to happen, and the page is going to speak to you in different ways. And we'll see what you guys think of this one at the end. As I'm drawing all of these lines, I'm just trying to make sure that no two lines are lining up, that we're just creating some fun different shapes. And the idea is going to be to do a little bit of collage on the top of this. Here's the deal with art journaling. There are no rules. You can do whatever just speaks to you in the moment. It doesn't have to be something that is picture perfect, ready for Instagram. It doesn't have to be something that you even show to anyone. The idea for art journaling is to learn to let go. And sometimes that means creating things that you don't think are necessarily very pretty. Maybe you're not in the mood to create something pretty. That happens to everyone at times too. Maybe you're just in the mood to make something messy. Maybe you want to try colors that you don't normally try. Maybe you're wanting to tear a bunch of paper because you're going to let out a little of aggression, and that works too. That is the joy of art journaling. You have to let go because so many parts of art journaling you can't control. You can't control a lot of mixed media. You can't control how things are going to turn out all of the time. And that's why I find this both a challenging process whenever I'm doing art journaling and also a really rewarding process because as a type A personality, someone that absolutely likes to control lots of the things that are going on around them, this is a very freeing process for me. And so that's why I've really leaned into it over the past few years in my creative journey, because this feels very different than every other part of the creative process that I work through. All right, I have attached all of my collage pieces to the page using Tombow adhesive, and now I'm coming back again with the black paint pen. And I wanted some of the pieces to be oddly shaped, but I didn't know how I wanted the shapes to be until I had them placed on top of where I had already drawn some of the lines. So now I'm extending some of the lines through. You're going to see what I'm going to do. I'm going to cut off a few of these pieces here and there to make some interesting shapes. I think playing with shapes is super fun, and I think playing with collage is a really easy way to start experimenting with art journaling. Collage is just something I think a lot of us did when we were younger. I remember covering books and, creating journals and stuff with pictures that I cut out of like 17 magazine, things like that. Well, you can still do the same thing that used to bring you joy back in the day. You can do it now. You might just be using some different magazines. Maybe you're using vintage papers. Maybe you are like me. Real Simple magazine works really well for me. It has some fantastic images that cover a wide array of topics. So it has always been kind of my go-to. There's a ton of journaling, like art magazines that you could use. There's all kinds of things. And a lot of times you can get those at thrift stores, get them for very cheap. But collage is a great way to start the process of art journaling, putting things on a page, starting to combine them in different and unusual ways will start to trigger the creative process in your head. I was actually slightly surprised at how easy some of these pieces came up considering they already had adhesive on the back. They cut very easily because they were out of that magazine paper, which is pretty thin paper. All I'm needing to do is use my craft knife, and the paper underneath is holding up really well because it's mixed media paper, which means it's a little bit thicker than your average paper. So the whole process, this worked pretty well. This is the only place it stuck just a little bit, but it came up in the end. How cute is that? Now, the hardest part is this little area. I want to cut out where this girl is, but she was already adhered to the top of that. And so I'm going to have to kind of freehand cut this section very carefully. My craft knife is getting a ton of use lately in my craft room. And this is a tool that I have not always had. But now that I have one, I cannot imagine crafting without a craft knife right there. For this next part of the process, I am working with those paint pens and I have sped this up a lot. This is what I would call the relaxing part. This is the letting go. I'm just going to color. I'm going to fill this in. I could have done this with a wide variety of mediums. I could have painted in here. I ended up deciding I wanted to use these paint pens because I really wanted to do the coloring. I wanted it to take the time. I wanted it to be a little bit mindless here and there so that I could concentrate on something else and just kind of let go. So I'm going to play a little music while I finish out filling in some of these colors in the blocks. As I am finishing up the colors with the orange block, I ended up going with all warm colors, which definitely is not my tendency. I like blues and purples and greens way more. So this felt very different and it felt very jarring, which I thought was interesting. Now, I got it all there and I was pretty happy with the coverage. Yes, you can see some of the coloring lines. That doesn't bother me. And what I thought all of these women in the collage pictures had in common was it looked like they were at work. It looked like one was climbing the stairs, like climbing the ladder at work. It looked like one was working at their house. This felt like women at work. And that was the word that kept coming up over and over. It wasn't a quote. It wasn't a feeling. It was just the word work. And so I went with that. I decided to repeat the word work over and over and over again. Originally, this was going to be the only word I added or the only place I added words, but we'll see how that evolves. So work, work, work. And I could have left it like this. I think this color blocking was very impactful, very intriguing, but for me, it was a little bit too neat and tidy, and I tend to like to get messy. So I'm going to pull out my favorite stencil. Again, a shock to no one. It is the brick stencil from Tim Holtz. I think it might possibly be the world's best stencil, and I'm actually going to use some white gesso through the stencil. I'm going to add a little bit of pixie spray on the back of the stencil so it stays in place, and I'm going to go at it with some white gesso to add some white brickwork. I probably went a little bit too heavy because it did not stay very neat and tidy in the stencil. I'm scraping it on, which is one of my favorite techniques with gesso in particular. I'm scraping it on. It got messy, and in all honesty, I kind of wish I had a bigger version of this stencil, but I'm working with the smaller version. We're gonna see it got super messy there, and then I was like, all right, well, it's on. Now we're just embracing the messiness, because at this point there's no going back. You can't just scrape it off. So you have to just keep going. I was a little bit nervous. This is that point, I say it in every art journaling video. I was a little nervous, like, oh no, maybe I need to turn off the camera. Maybe this one's done. Maybe this video's not going to work. But I always like to show you that if you just keep going, you can create a product that you feel better about. Maybe it's not going to be something, a finished product that you love in the end, but you will probably feel better about it. All right, splatters always make me feel better. So I have my Dina Wakley gloss spray, and what I'm concentrating the splatters on is the edges. I didn't like how, again, the bricks felt a little bit linear, a little boxy at some of the edges, and to me, the splatters softened it up a great deal. So I'm going to add the splatters. Then once those are done, I will take the whole thing off, dry it off really well. And while I was standing there drying with my heat tool, I looked over and saw a little cubby in my little card catalog, and it had large letters in it. And they are these large felt letters that say work. And to me, I needed a different focal point because I felt like there wasn't really necessarily a focal point, and these letters are totally doing it for me. So big felt letters straight on, and that's gonna be it. Let me know. Hit or miss. It's okay if you think it's a miss. Sometimes I think it's a miss too, and there are other ones that I've thought were misses, but for me, it's all about the process and experimenting and letting go, and that's what makes art journaling really important to me. As always, I will link all of the supplies that I use down in the description box below. I want to give a huge shout out to all of my Patreon members. If you are looking for a creative community to cheer you on while you are trying new crafty and creative things, Patreon is the place to be, so check out the link below. I hope all of you have a fabulous day, and as always, keep it creative.